Today we are going to discuss on the dollar power. The main idea of this slide is that dollar's decline, if it happens, will probably not look like a sudden collapse. It is more likely to be seen as a slow erosion of power. According to the Chatham House, history gives us an important warning. Sterling, or the British pound, was once the world's leading global currency. Britain was the center of the trade, finance, and empire. But even after Britain's economic and military power started weakening, sterling did not disappear overnight. Its decline took decades. The same lesson applies to the dollar today. The question is not, will the dollar vanish tomorrow? That is unlikely. The better question is, how slowly will the dollar dominance weaken and what shocks will happen all along the way? So the slide's core message is simple. Reserve currency decline is usually slow, messy, and full of crises. This slide explains why a global currency becomes dominant in the first place. A reserve currency is not just money, it is part of a larger system of trade, finance, and power. When many countries trade in one currency, businesses and government need that currency more often. That creates more demand for it. Then, because the demand is high, borrowing in that currency becomes cheaper. Financial market becomes cheaper and deeper. Investors prefer holding asset in that currency because they are liquid and more trusted. This creates a self-reinforcing loop. There is also a geopolitical side. A powerful country can use its economic strength, military influence, and trusted government debt to attract global investors. But there is a danger. The dominant power may overreach. It may issue too much debt, use finance as a weapon, or take its privileged position for granted. That is why the currency dominance is powerful, but also fragile over time. This slide uses sterling as a historical example. In the late 19th century, Britain was at the peak of its global power. It accounted for a very large share of global trade, and sterling was widely used for international invoicing and settlement. But Britain's dominance began to fade as its economic and military weight declined. Still, sterling was not immediately replaced. During the interwar years, sterling and the dollar existed as a close rivals. After World War II, the dollar clearly overtook sterling, but sterling still kept a meaningful global role into the 1970s. This matters because it challenges the idea that a reserve currency must collapse quickly once its country weakens. Sterling shows the opposite. Currency dominance can survive long after national power begins to decline. The lesson is that the end of a monetary dominance is usually prolonged, political, and path dependent. This slide challenges one of the most common arguments in favor of dollar dominance, the idea that there is no alternative. This article argues that this is too simple. History shows that a dominant currency can weaken even if no single rival is perfect enough to fully replace it. Today, the dollar still leads in the global foreign exchange reserves, but its shares has fallen from nearly 75% to below 60% over the past quarter quickly. Meanwhile, the euro has remained a stable second place currency, holding around 20% of the global reserves. The euro also plays a major role in trade invoicing, partly because of the trade inside the euro area. China and the euro area are also larger trade partners than the United States for many countries. So the future may not be about one new currency replacing the dollar. It may be about a more crowded system where the dollar, euro, CNY, that is the Chinese currency, and the other assets all share the same influence. The key point is alternatives do not need to be perfect to reduce the dollar's dominance. This slide responds to the argument that dollar-based technology, especially stablecoins, will protect the dollar dominance. Some people argue that dollar-denominated stablecoins will increase the global demand for dollars because they make dollars payments faster, cheaper, and easier across the borders. That may be true to some extent, but technology is not the real foundation of reserve currency power. The real foundation is trust. A currency dominates when people trust the asset behind it. That trust comes from scale, credibility, low inflation, sound public finances, deep markets, and safe assets. Sterling's history is useful here. Sterling's global role was not built only on government bonds. It was also supported by private trade bills, which were trusted because they were backed by Britain's commercial power and financial credibility. So the message is payment technology can distribute a currency, but only a credibility can anchor it. This slide explains that currency decline may be slow, but it is not always smooth. Sterling's decline was interrupted by several major crises. In 1931, sterling crisis helped bring down the gold standard. In 1949, devaluation forced a reset inside the Bretton Woods system. In 1968, renewed pressure helped weaken the Bretton Woods further. And in 1976, Britain had to turn to the IMF for a bailout. These were not some small technical events. They affected the global monetary system and also created domestic political pain inside the Britain. The same idea matters for the dollar today. A dominant currency can remain central for a long time, even while the stress signals appear. The warning signs are not only a falling exchange rate, they can also include rising bond yields, falling equities, and investors questioning whether US assets are still as safe as before. So the point is not that the dollar will die in one dramatic moment. The real risk is repeated shock that slowly weaken the confidence. The dollar is still the world's most important currency. It has unmatched financial depth, liquidity, and global reach that will not disappear overnight. But history suggests that dominance can erode slowly after a country's relative economic and strategic power begins to decline. Sterling experience shows that the process can take decades and still produce major crises along the way. The likely future is not a world where the dollar suddenly disappears. It is more likely a world where the dollar remains important but less exclusive. More countries may diversify the reserves. More trade may be invoiced in other currencies. More investors may hedge against US political and fiscal risks. So, the real debate is not whether the dollar vanishes. The real debate is how the world becomes less dependent on one single currency. In simple words, the future may not be the end of the dollar, but the end of dollar singularity. Thank you.